30 days, 6 countries, one simple question. Do the numbers actually add up when you're standing there, wallet open, trying to live your real life? Every year, the same destinations cycle through the same retirement videos. Portugal, Mexico, Thailand, Bali, Chiang Mai. You've watched those videos. Maybe you've watched dozens of them. And for a long time, the content, including content like mine, kept repeating the same numbers. $1,200 a month in Thailand, $1,500 in Lisbon, $800 in Bali. The math looked beautiful from a desk in the United States. Then I actually went. 30 days minimum on the ground in each country. Not hotel stays, not Instagram itineraries, real apartments, rented through local platforms, local markets, not tourist markets. Conversations with retirees who'd been there for years and separate conversations with retirees who'd quietly come back. A spreadsheet tracking every dollar, every day. Every visa requirement read directly from official government immigration portals, cross-checked with local immigration attorneys. And here's what the data showed, is 4 of the 6 most promoted retirement destinations in the world are no longer what they're being sold as. The costs are wrong, the visas are worse than advertised, and the quality of life per dollar, the only metric that actually matters for a $1,500 monthly budget, has collapsed in destinations that were genuinely great 5 years ago. But 2 of them delivered. 2 out of 6. 2 destinations that barely appear on mainstream retirement lists. Both of them offering something the overhyped 4 simply can't touch anymore. And number 1 is a place I will wager most of you watching this have genuinely never once considered for retirement. Stay until the end. It might be the most useful 90 seconds of your retirement planning. Let me be clear about what this is and what it isn't. This isn't a ranking built from forum posts or recycled TripAdvisor reviews. For each country, I spent a minimum of 25 days on the ground. I rented apartments through local platforms, not the expat-facing international ones with inflated foreigner rates. I shopped at markets where locals shop. I ate where locals eat. I tracked every cost daily in a shared spreadsheet. I sat with expat communities, both the enthusiastic recent arrivals and the candid long-timers who've seen the place change. And critically, I also spoke with retirees who tried these places and left. Their experience is part of this data too. Every visa requirement in this video was verified directly against official government immigration portals in 2025 and cross-referenced with licensed immigration attorneys in-country. Because visa rules change constantly, and content that gets these details wrong doesn't just waste your time, it can cost you real money and real-life decisions. That's not acceptable. So we checked. Here's what we found. The lie. You've seen the photos. A private villa, a rice paddy view, a pool you share with no one, silence, birdsong, and incense on the morning air. $800 a month. Those photos are real. That price isn't. Not anymore. Not even close. Bali is one of the most physically beautiful places on Earth, and I mean that without any qualification. The terraced rice paddies of Ubud, the temple at Tanah Lot rising out of the sea, the volcanic profile of Mount Agung dominating the horizon, the south coast beaches at sunrise before the crowds arrive. None of that is exaggerated. It's all real, and it's all extraordinary. But the version of Bali that budget retirement content has been selling for the last decade, that version lives in Ubud circa 2014, not the Canggu of 2025. Here's exactly what happened. The global remote work explosion hit Bali harder than almost anywhere on the planet. A massive, sustained wave of high-earning digital nomads and tech workers, many of them in their 30s, many earning San Francisco salaries while spending Indonesian rupiah, completely reordered the cost structure in every neighborhood worth living in. A furnished one-bedroom apartment in Canggu or Seminyak, the areas with English-speaking services, functioning expat infrastructure, and decent private clinics nearby, now runs $900 to $1,400 a month. Not $400, not $600, $900 to $1,400. Stack rent with food, transportation, utilities, the occasional grocery run at the Western stocked supermarket when your system demands something familiar, a gym membership, and the social life that makes living abroad sustainable, and a single retiree living in the areas shown in most retirement videos is spending $2,000 to $2,500 a month, not $1,500, not anywhere near $1,500. And then there's the visa situation, which is the deeper problem. Indonesia has no dedicated retirement visa. What exists is a collection of workarounds, tourist visas you extend repeatedly, the social cultural visa that requires an Indonesian sponsor and comes with its own bureaucratic friction, or the second home visa launched with great fanfare in 2022. That last one sounds promising until you read the actual requirements. A $130,000 asset deposit held in an Indonesian bank account, not monthly income, an upfront deposit. The right to stay indefinitely, permanently conditional on a government that has rewritten its foreigner policies multiple times with little warning and no apology. Healthcare in Bali has one honest answer for serious situations. BIMC in Seminyak and Siloam in Denpasar handle routine care adequately. A real medical emergency, cardiac, surgical, neurological, and the standard advice from every long-term expat I spoke with is the same. Get to Singapore or Kuala Lumpur. That means medical evacuation insurance is not a budget line item you can skip. It's a foundational cost that nobody's including in the $800 a month brochure. The verdict: if you're 35, earning remotely, and craving the Bali experience for a year or two, the case still partially holds in less developed areas. If you are 62, retired, working with $1,500 a month, and needing consistent access to reliable healthcare and visa stability, Bali doesn't fit the math in 2025 and 2026. It failed the test, and yet we still have number 5. The lie. For a specific, narrow window of time, roughly 2016 to 2021, the Lisbon retirement story was real and earned. It was genuinely one of the best value propositions in all of Western Europe. an EU capital, ancient tram lines climbing cobblestone hills, Atlantic beaches 20 minutes from the city center. One of the most favorable tax regimes in the developed world, the non-habitual resident program giving foreign retirees a flat 10% tax rate on foreign-sourced income, English spoken more widely than in most of Southern Europe, and rents that felt impossible for a European capital. That window is closed, and it closed fast. Here are the numbers. A furnished one-bedroom apartment in Lisbon, in a neighborhood where you'd actually want to live, Príncipe Real, Estrela, Alfama, Moraria, now runs $1,600 to $2,500 a month. In 2019, that same apartment was $700. That is not a typo. That is a real, documented, 200% plus rent increase over 6 years, driven by a perfect, merciless storm of short-term rental platforms gutting the long-term housing stock, a sustained wave of wealthy European and Brazilian in-migration, aggressive real estate investment from foreign buyers, and, yes, years of breathless, best country to retire cheaply, content doing exactly what it does best, advertising a place to death. If a destination gets famous enough for being cheap, it stops being cheap. That's not a theory. That's a law. Lisbon is Exhibit A. The tax situation shifted just as dramatically. Portugal's celebrated NHR regime, the non-habitual resident scheme that had foreign retirees declaring victory for a decade, was terminated for new applicants in January 2024. It was replaced with a program called IFIHI, which is narrower, more complex, and still being interpreted by tax attorneys who can't fully agree on what it means. Anyone who's been planning a Portuguese retirement based on NHR numbers they read before 2024 needs to know that the foundation of that math has moved. The D7 passive income visa still exists, still functions, and Portugal itself hasn't changed. It remains beautiful, functionally English-friendly, low in violent crime, excellent in infrastructure, extraordinary in food and culture. None of that is gone. What's gone is the affordability argument at the $1,500 level. If your retirement budget is $2,500 to $3,000 a month, Portugal still makes a compelling case. The Alentejo countryside, the Silver Coast, and even Porto offer better value than Lisbon proper. But in the destinations most content actually promotes, the math no longer works. Portugal failed the test not because it's a bad place, but because it's no longer an affordable place and too much content hasn't updated the numbers to reflect that. The lie, Mexico requires the biggest caveat on this entire list. And I want to be precise, because Mexico is not one place. It's a continent disguised as a single country. And which Mexico you're talking about completely determines whether the retirement story is true or false. The Mexico being actively sold to American retirees right now, Playa del Carmen, Tulum, Los Cabos, Puerto Vallarta waterfront, the Quintana Roo Riviera, failed the test. The other Mexico, the inland Mexico, the smaller city Mexico that most of these videos aren't showing you, is a completely different conversation, one worth having, but not the one being had. Here's what's happening in the coastal expat corridors. Playa del Carmen, a legitimate $1,200 a month retirement destination in 2018, has been remade. A furnished one-bedroom in a decent neighborhood close to the beach, safe, walkable, near English-speaking services, now runs $900 to $1,500 a month. Some beachfront buildings are pricing above that. The Tulum rental market, which spent years being sold as a bohemian budget escape, now has certain buildings running at per square foot costs that exceed parts of Los Angeles. Not joking. That actually happened. Food tells the same story. Grocery stores in expat zones have fully adopted dual pricing. The same item in a tourist-facing supermarket costs 40% to 60% more than the identical item at a local market 2 miles inland. That local market requires both geographical knowledge and enough Spanish to navigate. Neither comes automatically. The quote, $8 a day food budget that circulates through retirement forums exists, but it requires local fluency that takes 6 to 12 months to build and a willingness to eat and shop exactly the way locals do, not the way expat communities do. The safety picture in the Quintana Roo corridor also demands honesty. The U.S. State Department currently issues a Level 2 advisory for that state. Exercise increased caution. That's not a catastrophic designation, but it's not nothing either. Documented cartel activity in the tourism economy exists. Petty crime against foreigners in coastal towns is consistent and acknowledged by every long-term expat I spoke with. The baseline vigilance required, gated residences, awareness of where you are and when, avoiding certain areas after dark, adds a psychological tax that doesn't show up in any monthly budget. Some people accommodate it easily, others find it quietly exhausting over time. Mexico's retirement visa, the temporary resident with pension or retirement income, requires demonstrating approximately $1,620 monthly in provable income as of 2025, workable for most retirees receiving Social Security plus any other fixed income. The legal pathway exists, the bureaucracy is real but navigable. Now, and this matters, inland Mexican cities tell a genuinely different story. Mérida, in the Yucatan, is safer than most coastal resort towns, genuinely walkable, culturally extraordinary in a way that the beach towns simply aren't, and still allows a comfortable single retirement at $1,400 to $1,700 a month. San Cristóbal de las Casas in Chiapas, San Miguel de Allende in Guanajuato, more expensive but still functional, at $1,800. These cities exist, they work, they just aren't getting the marketing. Mexico, as it's usually packaged and sold, the coastal resort version, failed the test. Mexico, as it actually exists in its remarkable interior cities, different story entirely. The lie. Chiang Mai is the grandfather of all budget retirement recommendations. For a full decade, 2010 through roughly 2020, it genuinely, honestly, legitimately earned the title. And I want to be straight with you, in terms of raw, day-to-day cost of living, Chiang Mai still holds up better than almost any other destination on this list. A furnished one-bedroom in the Nimmenhamen or Old City area runs $350 to $600 a month. A full meal at a local Thai restaurant, and the food here is some of the best on earth, costs $2 to $5. Bumrun grad-affiliated private hospitals in the city deliver world-class care at a fraction of U.S. costs. A specialist consultation runs $25 to $50. Numerically, the city still largely makes the math work. Chiang Mai's lie isn't the cost, it's the visa. And for retirement planning, the visa is the whole ballgame. Thailand has no retirement visa in the traditional sense of the word. What exists is the non-immigrant OA, the so-called retirement visa, and it requires either 800,000 Thai baht, approximately $22,000 at current exchange rates, locked in a Thai bank account and verified by immigration, or proof of $2,000 per month in foreign pension income, or a combination formula that satisfies both thresholds. That financial bar is manageable for many retirees. The problem isn't the money, the problem is everything that happens after approval. Every single year you renew, every single year you prove the funds again, present the bank documents again, stand in the immigration line again. Every 90 days, you report your physical presence to Thai immigration, in person at an office or online, without exception, regardless of what else is happening in your life. There is no path to permanent residency through the retirement visa system. After 10 years in Chiang Mai, after 20 years, you are still a temporary guest who can be asked to leave. Thailand has amended its visa rules and requirements with almost no warning on multiple occasions over the past decade. The requirements I'm describing today may be different by the time you watch this. Every expat I sat with who had been in Chiang Mai for 8, 10, or 12 years said some version of the same thing. The uncertainty never fully goes away. You never completely unpack. The retirement isn't entirely yours because part of your standing there is always conditional on a government decision you have no input in. Chiang Mai passed the cost test. It failed the stability test. And stability, the knowledge that your retirement home is actually yours to keep, matters as much as the monthly budget breakdown, often more. The Truth, Georgia, the country, sitting at the ancient crossroads of Europe and Asia, the Caucasus Mountains to the north and the Black Sea to the west, is the most underrated retirement destination I tested in the entire 30-day exercise, and I went in expecting very little. Let me give you the numbers first. A furnished one-bedroom apartment in Tbilisi's best neighborhoods, Vera, Vake, the old town of Matatsminda, with its funicular railway and sulfur bath district below, runs $350 to $550 a month. Not $350 for a grim studio, $350 for a renovated flat in a functioning neighborhood with a cafe downstairs and a wine bar around the corner. A week's groceries at a local market cost $25 to $35, and those markets are stacked with fresh produce, herbs, churchkella, and cheese varieties that take months to learn. A full meal at a Georgian restaurant and Georgian food built around slow-roasted meats, butter-fried bread stuffed with cheese, pomegranate-dressed salads, and the richest walnut sauces you've tasted in your life runs $7 to $10, including a glass of wine. A single retiree living genuinely well in Tbilisi spends $900 to $1,200 a month, not bare bones. Well, a $300 to $400 buffer above that budget, and you're living in a way that would genuinely impress people back home. The visa situation is, simply put, the most generous of any country I tested, and one of the most generous toward Americans of any country in the world. U.S. citizens enter Georgia without a visa and may stay for 365 consecutive days. Not 90, not 180, 365 days. No application, no processing fee, no bureaucratic process, no bank deposit requirement. You land, you stay, you live. A formal residence permit exists for those who want permanent roots, and the application process, while imperfect, is manageable with a local attorney. But the immediate, zero-friction access to a full year of legal residency is unlike any other country on this list. English is the honest middle ground. It's not Malaysia or the Philippines. Among Georgians over 50, especially outside the capital, it's limited. But among Georgians under 35, in the hospitality sector, in medical facilities, in the neighborhoods where expats cluster, Vera and Vake specifically, English is increasingly fluent, and it's a cultural priority because Georgia has made a deliberate choice to align with the West in ways that are visible everywhere. The country is in the process of applying for EU candidacy. The appetite for international engagement is structural, not superficial. Healthcare. Tbilisi's private hospital system, clinics like Aversi, Yashvili, and the well-regarded Mediclub, delivers solid care at prices that feel almost fictional by US standards. A specialist consultation runs $20 to $40. An MRI is $120 to $180. Routine procedures cost a fraction of US equivalents. For complex interventions, cardiac surgery, oncology, some expats prefer Istanbul or Ankara, both reachable by a 2-hour flight. That's a genuine consideration. Building it into your healthcare strategy isn't optional. The catches are worth naming clearly. Georgia shares a border with Russia and has 2 Russian-occupied territories, South Ossetia and Abkhazia, that represent a real and ongoing geopolitical shadow. Every long-term expat I spoke with described it as background tension rather than daily threat. Tbilisi itself has not experienced conflict. But it is a fact of the country's situation, and you should factor it into your risk assessment, not ignore it. Infrastructure outside the capital ranges from adequate to genuinely rough. Tbilisi summers are hot. The influx of Russian émigrés since 2022 has pushed rents upward in certain neighborhoods. Not dramatically, but noticeably. And Georgian bureaucracy, while improving, still moves at its own pace. The verdict? A year of visa-free access, $1,100 a month, extraordinary food and wine culture, improving English, a government actively pursuing EU alignment, and a city that rewards the curious mind for years. Georgia passed the test, and it wasn't particularly close. And yet, we still have number 1. The truth, Albania. Say it out loud. Feel the surprise. Then understand that the surprise itself is why this is number 1. Albania doesn't appear on mainstream American retirement lists. When it appears in the popular imagination at all, the associations are decades out of date. Images from the communist isolation that ended in 1991, a country that has been transforming at a speed that hasn't yet reached the content that shapes American perceptions of the world. That gap between what Albania actually is in 2025 and what most Americans think it is worth real money to anyone willing to look. Saranda sits on Albania's southern Riviera, a stretch of Ionian coastline that looks like the Greek islands looked before the Greek islands became the Greek islands, because Saranda literally faces Corfu. On a clear day, you can see it from shore, the Greek island sitting 17 miles across the sea, visible from cafe tables along the promenade. Limestone mountains drop sharply into water colored like a jeweler's display case. Small fishing boats, whitewashed buildings stepping up the hillside, ancient ruins at Butrint, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, 30 minutes down the coast. The physical beauty here is not subtle and it is not manufactured for tourists. It's just what the place looks like. Here are the costs. A furnished one-bedroom apartment in Saranda with a sea view, an actual sea view, not a building across the street from the sea, runs $300 to $450 a month. If you want a two-bedroom to have a guest room when family visits, budget $500 to $700. A full meal at a good local restaurant, fresh seafood, grilled lamb, Albanian bajrak, slow-braised ragu, costs $7 to $10, including a glass of local wine that costs less than a bottled water would in a Manhattan restaurant. A week of groceries at the local market runs $25 to $35. A single retiree living genuinely well in Saranda, well, not frugally, not austerely, but with meals out, outings, occasional day trips to Butrint or the Blue Eye Spring, cable and internet and AC, spends $950 to $1,100 a month. At $1,500, you have money left over every single month. At $1,500, you are comfortable by local standards in a way that is visible and real. The visa situation mirrors Georgia's remarkable generosity. U.S. citizens enter Albania visa-free and may stay for 1 year. No application, no fees, no financial proof required at entry. Albania is currently an EU candidate nation. The accession process is underway, the legal and administrative systems are being modernized to EU standards, and the trajectory, while not immediate, is clear and structural. The government's strongest economic incentive is to remain welcoming to Western visitors and residents. English is the honest caveat. Older generations, particularly outside tourist areas, have limited English. Albanian is the dominant language, and learning at least conversational basics is not optional if you want to feel genuinely embedded rather than merely tolerated. That said, Albanians under 40 in Saranda, and especially those working in hospitality, restaurants, real estate, and medical services, are increasingly fluent. The tourism sector has made English an economic priority in a way that is visible and accelerating. The friction is real, it's manageable, it's not a deal breaker. Healthcare. Saranda has a local hospital adequate for routine care, medications, and acute illness. For anything serious, surgery, complex diagnostics, cardiac events, the private clinics in Tirana, Albania's capital, are the destination. That's a 2.5-hour drive north on roads that have improved dramatically in recent years, but are still not German Autobahn. Some expats in Saranda build a more practical option into their healthcare planning. Corfu, Greece, is 35 minutes by ferry, The Greek private healthcare system, far more developed, is a short boat ride away. Good international health insurance is not a luxury here. It is the foundation everything else sits on, and no monthly budget in this video should exist without it. The risks are genuine. Albania is developing rapidly, which means construction is ambient, infrastructure is still inconsistent in some areas, and the legal framework for foreign property ownership, while improving under EU pressure, is navigating a history that included, within living memory, a communist command economy that collectivized land and housing. Property rights are strengthening. They are not yet at EU levels. Understand what you're buying or renting before you commit. Work with a local attorney. And the rule of law more broadly, while improving, is still building credibility. That's not a deal breaker, it's a context. Here's the catch that matters most, and the reason this video matters right now. The window is open, but it is not permanently open. Italian buyers have been arriving in Saranda for years. Property developers are watching the EU accession timetable. The infrastructure investment that comes with accession will bring more attention, higher valuations, and higher rents. In 5 years, the costs you're reading in this script will be a fond memory in the expat community there. Not a crisis, just a memory. But right now, today, a safe, functioning, staggeringly beautiful European coastal town on the Ionian Sea, facing Corfu, near UNESCO ruins, with a seafood dinner for $9, a sea view apartment for $400 a month, visa-free entry for a full year, and an EU trajectory that suggests the infrastructure will only improve for under $1,100 a month. That's number one, and it's not particularly close. 6 countries, 30 days minimum on the ground in each one. The truth instead of the brochure. Bali. Physically extraordinary, no retirement visa, real monthly costs of $2,000, and climbing in every desirable area. Portugal, the dream that worked until the world showed up and the rents tripled. The tourist coast of Mexico, gringo pricing built into a Mexican wrapper. The real Mexico still exists, but it's not what you're being shown. Chiang Mai, the numbers still largely hold, but the visa instability means you never fully own your retirement there. Then the 2 that passed. Tbilisi, Georgia, a full year of visa-free access, $1,100 a month for a genuine quality of life, food and wine culture that rewards you for years, a country actively building toward Europe. And Saranda, Albania, Ionian Sea views that rival Santorini, a furnished apartment for $400 EU trajectory, UNESCO ruins down the road, a full year of visa-free access, and most of the people watching this have never once thought of it. The world is wider than the lists tell you, and the best destinations are almost never the famous ones. The famous ones are famous because they were great. They were great because nobody knew about them. Now everybody knows. That's not where the value is anymore. The value is in the places that are still a surprise when you say the name out loud. Now, before you start building a budget around Saranda, and I hope you do, there's one more layer of this you need. We spent 30 days testing costs. But cost is only half of the retirement equation. The other half is exposure. Your financial exposure, your healthcare exposure, and the political stability of the country that you're now counting on. We've done that research too. which retirement visa programs are one policy change away from disappearing, and one of the countries on today's list is closer to that line than it wants to admit? Which destinations that look safe in the rankings have infrastructure gaps that show up only after you've already moved? And the two countries that almost every quote-unquote best retirement list includes that carry risks that aren't being talked about clearly, that video is already there. It's the one you probably should have watched first. Do the research. Visit before you commit. The best decision you'll make is the one you made with your own eyes open.